We are and hitting the record button, Baruch Hashem. Tonight we're going to be learning Daf Nun Gimel. Daf Nun Gimel speaks about some of the continued discussions of Shvisas Behema, about what animals are allowed to go out with. We're also going to be discussing a very practical halachic sugya of the Gzeira D'Rabbanan that we are not allowed to take medications on Shabbos, and whether or not we're allowed to give our animals, whether or not there's a Gzeira that extends to animals as well in regards to medications, and that will take us toward the end of Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis, not yet to the top of Nun Daled Amud Aleph as was requested yesterday. So we'll be stopping about 12 lines from the bottom of Nun Gimel Amud Beis. So let's get started. We are at the Mishnah on the bottom of Nun Beis Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Chamor, a donkey, Yotze v'mardas. The mardas, if you've ever been to any place where you would ride an animal, there's a garment that goes underneath the saddle. So that's what this is referencing. Bisman chik shura bo. It is permissible for a donkey to go out in a reshus harabim. There's no isser of shvisas behemto. Your animal is not considered to be carrying when he does this, as long as it's tied on. Now, if it isn't tied on, so then it can fall, and then the animal, that can lead to some side issues. So therefore, it has to be kshura. We'll analyze this in the Gemara. Zecharim yotzim lulavim. Males can go out levuvin. Males are yotzim levuvin. We don't know what this means yet. We'll learn later, not today, but we'll learn in the next couple of days what that means. Rechelos use yotzos, shechuzos, kivulos, v'kivunos. We'll learn what all of these terminologies mean, just to show you that I'm not making that up. The Rashi says 4 lines from the bottom, Mefarish Bigmara. We will get to all of these terminologies as well. We will learn about one of them today, which is kivunos, which we'll learn in the next line. Ha'izim yotzos tzeruros. Goats can go out with their udders, tzeruros, all tied up. Rabbi Yossi Omer Bechulan. He forbids all of them, namely that all of them are considered carrying, with the exception of rechelim, which are ewes that are kivunos, that are wearing some type of garment to protect their fur. Take a look at Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom. Shehu shmiras tzimran. It's considered to be a tachshid. Now, when we see the language of tachshid, that is a language of kula, the language of leniency. When I was in college, I was on Hatzalah, and we used to carry radios on Shabbos. And the reason why it was not considered problematic to wear the radios with a clip on our belt is because it was deemed to be a tachshit. I believe, if my memory serves me right, that was based on Gemaras like this and the subsequent, obviously quite subsequent Shuba of Rav Moshe Feinstein, that these things are treated like tachshitim. So, but this language of tachshit that Rashi is quoting here, and now let's go back in the Mishnah, this garment that the Rachel is wearing to keep the fur, to keep the wool clean, is not considered to be carrying. It's just considered to be a tachshit, like wearing an earring for a woman, which is deemed appropriate. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Izim Yotos Tzeroros Liabesh, that Izim goats are allowed to go out with the udders that are wrapped up, that are wearing a containment case of some kind, but only Liabesh, only to dry out the milk. However, Avalola Chalav, but not to collect milk. That would be considered halachically inappropriate. And the same is this, we know as well, that one is not allowed to drink milk that was milked on Shabbos. Even if a woman has to nurse for her child, of course she can nurse directly, but for women who, for example, extract milk via pumping, so it's allowed, the pumping is allowed because it would be very painful, so there's a heter mitzad that, but the milk should not be utilized and is typically spilled out, and that's because of this, that you're not allowed to benefit from the milk that is derived on Shabbos unless it is direct from the mother to the child. Opens the Gemara on the top of Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Amar Shmuel v'hu shekshur lo me'erev Shabbos. Looking back at the very first line of our Mishnah, we said that a chamor can go out with that blanket that's on top of it as long as it is kshura. And now the Gemara is adding only if it's kshura me'erev Shabbos. Amar of Nachman masnisanami deka. This actually is can be inferred. Our Mishnah is actually very accurate. Where are we going to learn the accuracy of our Mishnah from? From another source in a Tanaim that we'll see in a couple of Dikatani, as the Brisa teaches us. Again, remember, we said that a chamor is allowed to go out with the mardas. Take a look at this Brisa, second line. Ein hachamor yotze b'mardas bizman she'ena kshura lo. This is a brisa that says that a chamor is not allowed to have that blanket draped over him unless it is tied. Now, Why would we need two sources that one just says it in the positive, one says it in the negative? Our Mishnah says the chamor can go out with the mardas, with the blanket, as long as it's tied. This brisa is saying the inverse, which is that it cannot go out if it's not tied. So it says the Gemara, hey chidami, what is going on here? It can't be that it's the same exact din. If you're going to tell me that there was no intention in this brisa for it to ever be tied, pashut that's going to be usher. I don't need this new brisa to tell me that. So therefore, pashut that it should be problematic. Dilma nafla leva asila asuye. Maybe the animal it'll drop and the animal will pick it up in its teeth and carry it back, and it'll violate the issur of carrying and violate the issur of shvisas behemto. Ella, it must be that this brisa elalav she'ena kshura me'erev Shabbos. This brisa is teaching a chiddush. Our Mishnah taught us that it needs to be tied. Shmuel says in the top line of our Gemara that it has to be tied from Erev Shabbos. And this brisa is saying that it must be that when is it that we don't allow an animal to carry this out? When it's Ein Kshur Me'erev Shabbos. Michlal, what does that imply? Dereisha, a reference to our Mishnah, Shekshura Lo Me'erev Shabbos Shmamina, that Shmuel's inference was in fact correct. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa to support Shmuel's inference, namely the top line of this Gemara, Behushak Shur Lame Erev Shabbos, that when can the chamor go out with the blanket on top of it, as long as it's tied? That's only if it's tied Me Erev Shabbos. Here's what the brisa writes: Chamor Yotzi B'Mardas Bizman Shek Shur Lame Erev Shabbos. Okay, that's what the brisa says. Now this brisa has already given us enough information to prove Shmuel's din. We've learned from the otherwise extraneous brisa, which we had to learn in a specific way. And because we learned that brisa in a specific way, we therefore have clarity on the shita of Shmuel, that our Mishnah is talking about Kshur L'Me'erev Shabbos. And we have enough information in the brisa, but the brisa does continue, and it will be the source for some conversation for today. Velo be'ukav, however, even though it's true, writes this brisa, even though it's true that a donkey is allowed to go out with a blanket on top of it when it's tied from before Shabbos, however, below ukaf, however, an animal is not allowed to go out in a saddle. An ukaf is a saddle. Even if the ukaf was tied before Shabbos, we might have thought that there was an equivalence between the mardas and the ukaf, between the blanket that goes on the animal and the ukaf, which is the saddle. We might have thought that as long as both of them are tied before Shabbos, no problem at all. Yet here the Tanna Kama seems to say that there's a difference between them, that the mardas is allowed as long as it's tied before Shabbos. However, the ukaf, the saddle, is not allowed even if it's tied before Shabbos. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, af ukaf, bizman shekshura lo me'erev Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is more lenient, and he does have an equivalence between the mardas, the blanket, and the ukaf, which is the saddle. Ubilvad, however, he does so with a couple of caveats. First of all, it has to be kshur me'erev Shabbos. Second of all, ubilvad shelo yikshar lo masrichen. It can't be tied very high up on the chest of the animal. Rashi, let me read the second part and then I'll explain. Ubilvad shelo yifshar lo ritzua tachas zinavo. And as well, it should not be tied under its tail. These were two locations on the donkey, where the owner would specifically tie the ukaf, tie the saddle, so that whatever load it was carrying on the sides of the saddle would not fall when the animal's going downhill. When the animal's going downhill, the strap that is running by the tail will keep the saddle in place. And when the animal's going uphill, the strap that's by the chest, close to the neck, will keep the packages in place as well. So there, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is willing to make the equivalence between the mardas and the ukaf to allow them both to be put on before Shabbos and worn in Rishus HaRabim by the animal, but only in a way where it's not tied as though it looks like it is going to be used for packages. And Rashi here explicitly explains this, that the reason why Rav Shimon ben Gamliel put these restrictions in place with the ukaf, with the saddle, was so that it doesn't look like you're preparing to go and carry packages on Shabbos. You can see this in Rashi Dibur Hamaschil Ubilvad, 2 lines from the top. The mechze kemi sherotze lehatino masu. It looks like the way you're tying it by putting it high on the chest and by putting another strap just below the tail, you're indicating to the public, it appears this way, and maybe it's not quite Marasign, but it may be just that it looks bad. So we don't want you to strap the ukaf in that way, because then it will look like you're about to do something wrong. Okay, end of mini sugya number 1. We're about a quarter of the way down. Ba mine Rav Asi bar Nasan me Rav Chia bar Ashi. So Rav Asi asks Rav Chia, Mahulitein mardas al gabe chamor b'Shabbos. Now the Mishnah was discussing what about putting it on before Shabbos, as we pointed out. It even has to be kshura before Shabbos. What if it's Shabbos right now? Am I allowed to put this towel, this blanket, on top of the animal? What's the context? Take a look at Rashi, 6-7 lines down. Dibur amaschil mahulitein mardas velo latzeis l'shus harabim ela b'chatzer umipnei atzina. So let's say you have an animal that's cold and it's outside. Are you allowed to put that blanket on the animal? As a general rule, animals are muksa. As a general rule, we really can't move an animal. So are we allowed to do that? In this case, are we allowed to service the animal in this way? Omar Le, Rav Chia said back to him, mutter, it is permissible to put the blanket on top of the chamor. Obviously, you can't tie it. That would be kosher, maybe midrabanan and maybe midoraisa, depending on what type of knot you tied. Because kosher, tying knots, of course, is one of the 39 malachos, as we will see in exactly 20 blot when we get to Daf Ayin Gimel Perek Klal Gadol. Here, Rabbi Chia says that it's mutter to drape the blanket over the animal to keep the animal warm. Again, right now we're not talking about shvisas behemto anymore. We're just talking about treating animals nicely. And therefore, in this case, we're allowed to because this animal feels cold. And you don't have to ask the animal if it feels cold. You're just allowed to cover the animal with the blanket, no problem. Omar Le, Ravasi says back to Rav Chia, why is it that you would say that this is permissible, but that an ukaf, a saddle, is not permissible to put on Shabbos for the same exact reasons? Seemingly that was his shita of Rav Chia. And says the Gemara, ishtik, Rav Chia remained silent. Very important Rashi. We have a general machlokes in the Gemara. When we see silence in the Gemara, is shtika kehoda adamya or is shtika lav kehoda adamya? So the question was asked to Rav Chia, well, wait a minute, what's the difference between mardas, between the blanket, and between the ukaf, between the saddle? And then he says, ishtik, we don't know what he means. Now, we could tell from the next line what he means, and Rashi will tell us what he means. If you take a look at Rashi, Dibur Hamaschil Esive, which is really the next line, but it'll help us to understand the next line if we read it now. Just take a look at that Rashi about 10, 12 lines down. Kasavur, ha de ishtik mishum zelo ashkach be. He ignored his question. De savar ukaf nami shari. He held, of course it's mutter. He kind of shrugged his shoulders like, what a ridiculous question. Of course it's mutter. On the heels of that explanation of Rashi, let's learn the next part of the Gemara. So the implication of the Gemara is that when Rav Chia was silent, it seemed to be the case that it was mutter not only to put the blanket on top of the chamor on Shabbos, but even to put the ukaf, even to put the saddle. So asks the Gemara, Esive ukaf she'al gabe chamor lo yataltalena biyado elamolicha mevia bechatzer who nofel me'elav. You're not allowed to even take off a saddle on Shabbos. They're muksa. You're not allowed to touch them at all. So how could it be, asks the Gemara, inferring, of course, from the silence of Rav Chia, how could it be that Rav Chia would allow to put on an ukaf on Shabbos if you're not even allowed to move it? Continues the argument. We have to say, we allow the animal to walk around and the ukaf can fall off by itself. In regards to taking off the saddle, we've said that you're not allowed. So if that's the case, you're going to tell me now that you're allowed to put it on him on Shabbos, Rav Chia? How can that be? Rav Chia, how can you allow that to happen? It's mamish mukta. It's not like the blanket, which is for cold. It's not. It has its own status of an isser tiltal, an isser derabanan of muksa. Amrle Rav Zera. Rav Zera says to the questioner here, who was Ravasi Bar Nasa, and he says, leave Rav Chia alone. Shavke. Shavak in Aramaic means to leave. Shavke, leave him alone. Leave him. Kirabe Svirale. Rav Chia is just following his Rebbe. What's the Mari Mekomos for that? The Amar Rav Chia Barashi Amarav Tolin Traskal. We are allowed to put a food basket around the neck of an animal, the behema b'Shabbos, the kal v'chomer lemardas. So if you can imagine seeing these things, I'm sure we've seen them at some point in our lives on some screen where an animal's feeding, and it basically the owner would put a basket of food by the mouth, and there's some type of connection points on the top of the animal's head so the animal can eat benachas. So here, that's what's being discussed here. It says the Gemara in the name of Rav, Tolan Traska lebehema b'Shabbos. One is allowed to feed an animal in this way on Shabbos, but kal v'chomer lemardas, and we make a kal v'chomer We make a tushtel from the world of the blanket. What is the tushtel that we make? Uma hasam timishum ta'anug shari. Over there, we say that even though it's only to make it a little bit easier for the animal to eat, they could have put their heads all the way to the ground and grazed. They don't need to have the basket on their head. But the fact that we allowed the animal to eat in that way, hacha demishum tsar lo kol shekain. Here, because the animal's cold and we therefore want to cover him, all the more so that should be permissible. So that is where we got to in regards to the shita of the Mardas, and seemingly Rav Chia would extend it as well to Ukaf. If he's cold, then it's mutter because of tsar, should be mutter as well. And then the Gemara, that was a shita of Rab. And then the Gemara teaches us the statement of Shmuel. What does Shmuel hold? A little bit different than Rav. Shmuel Omer Mardas Mutter. I do agree with you, Rav, that to put the blanket on the animal is okay because the animal is bitza'ar. When someone is cold, when an animal is cold, then we are allowed and possibly even obligated to cover the animal. However, traskal usher. Shmuel was of the opinion that a traskal, that this basket of food that we hung around the neck for the convenience of the animal to eat, would be problematic. Just to take a little break from the text for a moment, there is a mitzvah in halacha to make sure that we are appropriately kind to animals. We know that one is not allowed to hurt animals. It's an isser of tsar balei chaim. We paskin that tsar balei chaim is an isser derabanan. That doesn't mean that the Torah wants us to abuse animals on a Torah level and only the rabbis came along to temper us. Of course, that's not the case, but it's just to remind us there are a lot of things that are Gzelas akum is an isser derabanan. That doesn't make it mutter. It's not right. We should still not do it. And it should be intuitive to us that it's inappropriate. To not pay your taxes is gezel akum. That's possibly even worse than that, but it's not mutter. It's still nisr derabanan. There's major problems with that. So here too, there's major problems with mistreating animals on a Torah level too. There's there's a lot of different mitzvos in the Torah. We have to make sure that if our enemy, if our oyev has an animal that is being overladen by packages, we have to help him. So we see a lot of things like that, but we do paskin that there is a mitzvah derabanan, or I should say the other, conversely, that there is an isser derabanan of tsar balei chaim. Let's continue right in the middle of the page. Azal Rab Chia bar Yosef. So Rab Chia had heard the statement of Shmuel that he held that Azal Rav Chia bar Yosef, Amr l'shmaisa de Rav kami de Shmuel. And what Rav Chia bar Yosef did is he went to Shmuel's base medrash and he said, Rabbi, Shmuel, I have to tell you, I just heard what Rav said. And what did Rav say? Let's review. So Rav said that it is permissible to use a traskal. It's permissible to use a basket. So Shmuel said a very powerful line. Amar le, ihachi amar Abba. We've seen this now a number of times. Abba was a term of endearment, a nickname of sorts that some people would call Rav. So Shmuel said, if that's the opinion of Abba, if that's the opinion of Rav, lo yoda b'milei de Shabsa v'lo klum. Rav knows nothing about Hilchos Shabbos. That is a very humbling line for the rest of us. If anyone can say that about Rav, we are in a very disastrous situation as it relates to Hilchos Shabbos. And the Gemara doesn't really finish the story. That's pretty much it. So we don't really know how that conversation ended quite yet. But basically, there's a machlokas between Shmuel and Rav in regards to the traskal. Rav holds that the traskal can be used; it's appropriate to be used on Shabbos, and Shmuel holds that it's usher. Let's continue, and the Gemara will get a little bit more clarity here soon in regards to the traskal. Kisalik Rav Zera, when Rav Zera went down, Ashkechei Rav Binyamin bar Yefes, the Yasiv, he saw that Rav Binyamin bar Yefes was sitting there, V'ka'amar lei, and he was saying, Mishmei Rav Yochanan, in the name of Rav Yochanan, that Nosnin Mardas al Gabe Chamor b'Shabbos, and he said the same thing that we saw, that both Rav and Shmuel agreed to. Rav and Shmuel only argued in regards to a traskal, but they agreed that the mardas, that the blanket was permissible to put on the animal because there's tsar there, because the animal's cold. So says the Gemara, Omar Lei said back to him, Yasher, wonderful. He's got the din right. He paskins like everybody else. Nobody argues about the mardas. You can put a blanket over a cold animal on Shabbos, no problem. V'chein tirgama Aryoch beBavel. This was also how the Aryoch, the Melech, the king of Bavel, paskin. What do you mean Aryoch Bavel? Who's Aryoch Bavel? Says the Gemara, Aryoch Manu, Shmuel. Shmuel was considered the Aryoch, quote unquote, the Melech of Bavel. that he was the posek. Says the Gemara, what do you mean only Shmuel? We already pointed this out a couple of times. Rav and Shmuel only argue in regards to a traskal, but they both agree in regards to the mardas, in regards to the blanket, that it's permissible to put the blanket over the animal. So says the Gemara, Rav Nami Amra, what is this? Oh, Shmuel, Aryoch, Bavel. Rav agrees too. What is this whole thing that you're focusing so much on Shmuel? Everybody agrees with this. Good job, Rav Yochanan, you got the din right. But why are you saying that Aryoch, Bavel, only Shmuel agrees? That's not correct. Shmuel and Rav both agree. So it says, Rav Nami Amra. Ella, no. The reason why he said that it was a din in Shmuel and not a din in Rav is because of the rest of the sentence that was being learned by Rabbi Yamin Bar Yafes. Elashame, he had heard to have a Messiah Bay. He finished the line with this: the aim tolan traskal b'Shabbos, and that is what Shmuel held earlier, as we saw. So now, when we put the two pieces together of what Rabbi Yamin Bar Yafes and Rav Zera were discussing, namely that the mardas is mutter, but the traskal is aser. Whose shita is that? That the blanket is permissible, but the food basket in front of the animal attached to the head is aser. That is the shita of Shmuel. Omar late to that he said, yeah, sure, you're correct. That is why over here we are saying that this was the shita of Shmuel and not the shita of Rav, because Rav doesn't agree. Rav says that a traskal is permissible on Shabbos. 2/3 of the way down. To kule al mamihas. Nevertheless, everybody seems to agree. Mardas mutter. Everyone seems to agree that that's the case. So, Maishna me'ukaf. Why is it that earlier we saw a dissenting opinion in regards to ukaf? We saw that there were two Tanaim. One Tana said that it's aser, and it does not create the equivalence between mardas and between an ukaf. And was it Rishim ben Gamliel or Rishim ben Elazar? I think it was Rishim ben Elazar. No, where is it? Here it is. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, excuse me. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was of the opinion that it is permissible, in fact, to have an ukaf under the conditions that the ukaf is not put on in a way where it looks like you're about to go traveling with a whole bunch of packages. Okay, so my shnami ukaf, what's the difference here? The Gemara is going to present two different answers. The first is more difficult than the second. Here, the Gemara answers, my shnami ukaf, shiny hasam, the efshar de nafil memela. Maybe it'll fall off on its own. What is this hinting to? It's hinting to the kal v'chomer that we had learned above, that if it's true that you're not allowed to even take off the ukaf on its own, you're certainly not allowed to put it on. So the Gemara says maybe it'll fall off on its own. And if that's the case, then the kal v'chomer is all gone. If the kal v'chomer is gone, then it is mutter to put on an ukaf. Very difficult answer to read in Pshat in the Gemara. Rashi seems to be saying something similar. There's Rashi about 4 inches, 5 inches above where we are. Dibur hamaschil. That's not correct. The nafil memela kidikatani molichum avil achatzer hu nafil me'elav. So there, based on the brisa that we had seen earlier, that it may fall off on its own. So then you've lost your kal v'chomer, because the kal v'chomer to say that an ukaf is muksa was dependent on the fact that you weren't allowed to be metaltalid. I'm not going to be metaltalid. I'm only allowing it to fall off on its own. So it kind of undoes the kal v'chomer. And let's see the second answer. Rav Papa Amar kan lechamima kan litzanina. It really depends. Each of these two things, the mardas is one, which is the blanket, and the ukaf is the saddle. And here, each one is functioning in a different way. Let's take a look at Rashi again, 4 inches above where we are, or so. Kan lechamima mardas. The mardas was meant to warm up the animal. Tzarech lechamima umuter mishum tzar detzina. The reason why we're allowed to put the mardas on is because the animal's cold. Aval netilas ukaf eino ela sheyitzdanein shenischamim al yedei masui shenasa mibeod yom. So, but taking off an ukaf was to make sure that the animal doesn't overheat. So that's what the Gemara is saying here. Let's go back inside the Gemara. Of Papa Amar kan lechamima kan litzanina. Here, when we put on the mardas, it's to warm up the animal. So that's why it's permissible, because when an animal is cold, so then we're obviously allowed to take care of it because of some extension of tsar ba'alei chayim. Kan litzanina. However, here, when we're taking off the ukaf, when we're taking off the saddle, that's only to lower the temperature of the animal, and that's not a problem. That is a problem. L'chamima isla tzara. When an animal is cold, to warm it up is helpful because the animal is uncomfortable. Litzanina, but to cool off an animal by removing the ukaf, less leitzara. The hainu the amre inchi, and this is what people would say. Clearly not today, but back in the day when the chamor was considered to be a normal part of culture, what would they say? That afilu b'tkufas tamuz karirale. Apparently, donkeys were always very, very cold. Someone just asked a question here. Why are we talking about a saddle when we cannot ride an animal, which is muksa? That's true. We cannot ride an animal. The Gemara in, I think, Rosh Hashanah says that you cannot ride an animal. We hinted to this yesterday as well, and in different Gemara. But because you may break off a stick and hit the animal. It's a well-known Gemara, which raised a lot of questions about Dinei D'Rabbanan in general and their likelihood for them to be executed. Here, we're not even talking about riding an animal. Right now we're really touching on two sugyas, a mixture of sugyas. We started with the sugya of shvisas behemto, and now we're talking about something else, which is a minor application of tsar balei chayim. Am I allowed to change the laws of muksa, as it were, because of tsar balei chayim? If the animal's cold, can I do something that otherwise would not be allowed? If the animal's hot, am I allowed to do something that otherwise we would not? It's true, but none of this has to do with riding the animal, because that would be its own isser derabanan. Absolutely correct. So we are now about 3/4 of the way down. Mesive, a Gemara is going to be posed here. The Gemara is going to pose a question against the Shita of Shmuel, who held that a traskal is usher. It is a Tosefta. Yes, it is a Tosefta here in this parak in Shabbos. It's a longer Tosefta, and the question won't be till the bottom of the page. So I will, of course, translate accordingly, but the ikar of what we're going to see is toward the bottom. Mesive, we see in a Tosefta, lo yetze hasus bizanav shu'al, an animal, a horse is not allowed to go out with zanav shu'al, which Rashi points out are horse blinders. Below bizaharuris shebein einav, and the horse is as well not allowed to go out with something decorative between its eyes. Lo yetze hazav b'kis shelo, a person is not allowed, a person who's anticipating seeing a zav discharge is not allowed to go out b'kis shelo. Kis literally translates as a pocket, but basically when people were trying to assess what their status was as it relates to Zav, either for Tuma or for Korban, would wear a pouch that would capture the discharge, and then they would know if in fact they were either Tameh for 7 days or not, or whatever the case may be, or Korbanos, whatever it was. But that, a man was not allowed to wear that outside when there was no Eruv. That's not allowed. Below Izim, it raises a similar question. I guess if a person is catheterized and they have a bag that they can carry with them in a hidden way, similar types of shilas. And goats as well, for those that were those that had udders, they would make sure that they were not allowed to go out with a kis, something that would cover them. And a cow could not go out with a muzzle. And now we're getting to our sugya. Siyachim is an animal called a colt. Betraxelin shebepihen l'rshus harabim. Now we're getting back to a sugya that we've spoken about with it, which is the traskal. I think I read it wrong. It's traskalin, not troxelin. Betraskalin, with the baskets that go in their mouth into the rshus harabim. Below behema, an animal cannot go out besandal sheberagleha, with some type of foot covering. Below bekamiya, and not with an amulet. Afal pishehu mumche, even if it's an amulet that is actually shown proof to work. Wow. Do we believe in these things? Apparently. This is found in a Tosefta, Maseches Shabbos. V'zeh chomer bebehema shebe'adam, mi be'adam. And this is more strict by animals than it is by people. Aval, however, yotze hu be'eged shal gabe hamaka, a person is, in fact, aval yotze, he is allowed to go out with a bandage on a wound, uvikshishin shal gabe shever, and with a splint that is on a broken leg, uvishilya hamidul deles, and an animal that is in the midst of birth and there's a placenta still connected to the body, but no longer inside the body, but rather hanging. Hamidul delasba, no problem. Upokikin la zug shebetzavara, and a zug, which is a bell, you're allowed to stuff the bell with material so that it won't ring. That's fine, and then it's allowed to go up betzavaro mitayela simo bechatzer, and then it could walk around in the courtyard. Katani Mihas, the Bryce is over. Now the Gemara is going to ask its question. Katani Mihas, what did we see within this Tosefta? We saw the din of Veloseyachem betraskalim shebefihem l'rshus harabim. We saw the din that a colt is, that he's not allowed to go into Rshus harabim with the traskal, with the basket that has food in it. So says the Gemara, Adiuk. It seems that it would be permissible to give an animal a traskal in a reshus hayachid, in a chatzer. So that seems to be a stira against Shmuel, because Shmuel was of the opinion that it's completely usher. Not only that, but he blew Rav out of the water. And he said, well, you don't even know anything about Hilchos Shabbos, man. How could you possibly say that? And maybe Rav would answer, because of the Tosefta and Maseches Shabbos. I have a perfect Mari Makom. What's your Mari Makom? So the Gemara is now asking a question against Shmuel. How can you say that the Traskal is not allowed if, at least by diuk, by implication, it seems that it is perfectly fine? So says the Gemara, to finalize the question, my lab, must we not be talking about a case, bigdolim, of animals that are big? Umishum tanu. It must be that here we're talking about an animal that's a big animal, and we're just trying to make it more convenient for him. And therefore, we're trying to upslug Shmuel and say, you can't possibly be right that a troskal is aser. Right? We see that it's mutter. Answers the Gemara, lo biktanim umishum tsar. What's the difference here between an animal that's a gadol and a katan? Here, Rashi points this out. We'll just save some time because it's getting late and we haven't started the next Amud yet. Here Rashi points out that what we're talking about is an animal that is a gadol, that the animal is a gadol, he has a longer neck. It's easy for him to graze on the ground. He has a longer neck. The katan has very significant limbs on his body in regards to arms and legs, but his head is just a little too stubby. It's hard for him to reach the grass. So there, Shmuel would say that this Tosefta must be talking about a katan, a smaller animal, where it's difficult for him to eat. And because he's bitzar, so therefore Shmuel would say that it's mutter. But he holds stark to his opinion that had it been only for tanug, only for the sake of making it a little bit more convenient for the animal, there too, the machlokas of Rav and Shmuel would exist. The Gemara continues, de kanami, we can prove this, de katani, turning to the top of Nun Gimel Amud Beis. Dumya de kamiya shmamina. This is similar to the kamiya, to the amulet. What does that mean? Take a look at Rashi, the Ramaschil, mishum choli. That there are times that we can be lenient when things are under extenuating circumstances. So that's how Shmuel understood this Tosefta. Omar Mar, top of Nun Gimel Amud Beis, v'lo bekamiya afal pi shum mumche. We have another. We saw in our Mishnah that you cannot take an amulet afal pi, even though shehu mumche, even though it's mumche. What does mumche mean? So I missed this Rashi on the bottom of the previous page, but basically that it was successful. I believe it said it was successful 3 times. That this amulet was something that actually worked a number of times. So it has a shtickle chazaka, that it's able to, in fact, impact one's health. This is a big hashkafa shaila. And you have things that are other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu, other than kavyachol, a siddur, a davening, just a heartfelt, heartsick tefillah to say that Hashem, can you please help me? Here it seems to be that we rely on these things. So says the Gemara, wait a minute, how can you say in the Tosefta that we learned at the bottom of Nun Gimel Amud Aleph that a kamiya is not allowed? Afal pi shum mumche v'ha'anan tznan. We have a Mishnah that we will see in just 6 blot or so that reads v'lo bekamiya she'eino mumche. The Mishnah there says that when is the amulet not allowed? Only when it's not a kamiya that's mumche, that works. But ha mumche shapir dami. But if in fact it is a good amulet, then we should say that it's perfectly permissible. So says the Gemara with this contradiction. Our Mishnah and the Mishnah on Daf Samech says the Gemara hachanami she'eino mumche. You're right. It must be that our Mishnah must be talking about an amulet, a kamiya, which is eino mumche, which is not a successful amulet. Says the Gemara, how in the world can you say that? Go look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says the words that it was a kamiya, that was a mumche, and afal pike, and the Mishnah said it was aser. So that's a ridiculous answer. So then the Gemara gives a different answer. Mumche la'adam, ve'eno mumche lebehema. It was mumche la'adam. It was, but it wasn't mumche lebehema. Because it wasn't mumche lebehema, so therefore the animal is not allowed to carry it out. Asks the Gemara, is there such a thing as an amulet that is a mumche that's been successful for human beings, but we wouldn't consider that amulet to be powerful enough, quote unquote, to impact an animal in the right way? We have a higher status than animals. How can that possibly be? Top of the food chain. Says the Gemara, yes, there is a scenario in which a person has a different connection to an amulet as an animal. And here's what it is. Adam, the Ispe Mazla Messiahle, a human being who could have mazel. Big discussion about what this is. Rashi has a wild sheet to here. Second line. Nope, that's not the right Rashi. Rashi says, if you are a mumcha, yes, it is the right Rashi. Second line of Rashi, Mazle, Malach Shelo Umeli Tzalav, that each of us has a malach that spends time with us 24/7 and is there to be of help to us. This gets into the whole shaila. Can you say by the slichos? Can you say the paragraph of machnise rachamim? Can you say the paragraph of the angels? Can you please bring my tefillos up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Is that considered appropriate? Is that considered not appropriate? Nevertheless, the Gemara here certainly raises it. This is in the Gemara. This is not an esoteric rishon. It's not a maharal. It's not a maharsha. This is mefurash and shas, that the human being has mazel, and therefore the amulet can help him. However, behema delesle mazla lo mesayale. So therefore, it could still be that we have a distinction between these two mishnayos. The one that says that it's eino mumcha is referring to one, and the one that says that it is a mumcha is referring to another. So by a human being, it's one, and by an animal, it's another, and we have a distinction to be made. Says the Gemara, Hachi, if that's the case, if you remember, there was a line that was snuck into the Tosefta that said that this is more strict with the behema than it is with the person. So says the Gemara, Yachi, what then did the Tosefta mean when it said that there was a chumrah by behema, which was by Adam? Take a look at Rashi Dibur Hamaschal Mai Zechomer. Adam nami lo nafikel the kamia mumchela Adam. The same exact din applies to the two of them, the animal and the human being of the same din. That only if the kamiya is mumcha. So then how can it be that there's a chumrah there? Says the Gemara, misavras kamiya koi. You thought that line that an animal has a chumrah that a human being doesn't have, that was talking about the kamiya? Absolutely not. A sandal koi, it was talking about whatever types of shoes or footwear that the animal would wear. Tashma, the Gemara continues. Sachin mefarchas in la'adam vein sachin mefarchas in behema. A person is allowed to put oil on themselves under certain circumstances on Shabbos, mefarchasin, and they're also allowed to put on basically scrub themselves as it relates to scabs on their body. La'adam vein sachin mefarchas in behema. So says the Gemara, my lav dika makom mishum sar. Don't we see from here? We must be talking about a case where it's a makkah and mishum sar. Says the Gemara, lo. The Gomar Maka Umishum Tanug. We're only talking about enjoyment here. However, had it been that it was in pain, then there would be no distinction here, and would it be permissible even for a behema. Tashma behema she'achza dam. The Meforshim here define achza dam as some type of blood congealing type of scenario. It can't be like a formal blood clot. It must be some type of scenario, maybe a blood circulation issue, something along those lines. Something together that. It says the Gemara, "Behema she'achza dam in ma'amidin oso b'shvil shetitzan." And you're not in ma'amidin oso b'mayim. Excuse me, left out that word. You cannot put the animal in cold water in order to make the animal cool off. Adam she'achzo dam. But if there's a human being who's under such circumstances, ma'amidin oso b'mayim b'shvil shetitzan. Why the distinction? Amar ula gdeira mishum shchika samemanim. Because Ula says we have an Isser Derabanan about applying and giving medications on Shabbos. This is found in Siman Shin Kav Ches and Shulchan Aruch, and it is halacha l'maisa that we are not allowed to take medication on Shabbos unless we have a status at a minimum of a chola she'ein bo sakana, someone who is sick. They are, as the Mishnah Brura, there are details as Shulchan Aruch discusses, you're nafal l'mishkav, you're chola kol gufo. But if stam you have a little bit of a headache or you're a little congested, that's not grounds for taking medication on Shabbos. And stam, that's Nisr Derabanan. Even though shchika samaman, we're not going to grind things up on Shabbos, and we don't even make our medications that way anyways. We get them in the bottle all prepared. Afal pikein, that would be an Nisr Derabanan. So much to talk about there, not now. Yihachi adam nami. If that's the case, that an animal is not allowed to be in cold water because it's refuah on Shabbos, so then a human being should also not allowed to be put in the water on Shabbos in form of a refuah. Answers the Gemara, Adam nira kemekar. When a person goes in the water, it doesn't look like refuah. It doesn't look like he's doing anything that's therapeutic, that's physically, physically health-wise helpful. He looks like he's cooling off. It's very hot. Yachi behema nami nira kemekar. We could have given the same argument that would have allowed for a behema to do the very same thing. Answers the Gemara, ein mekar lebehema. There is no behemas don't chill in the pool. That's not what we're talking about. So the Gemara rejects that possibility. We have gzeros derabanan by animals. I mean, is there a limit? Do we say like animals have to keep dinei deoraisa but not gzeros derabanan? What's going on here? How could it be that an animal has a gzeros derabanan? Tanya, after all, we have a brisa that says that an animal that's outside of the tchum Shabbos, so as well known, we'll learn about this more in the Masechta. Tchum Shabbos, there's an Isser Doraisa for a person to walk 2,000 amos outside of the city limits into a space where there are no homes for those 2,000 amos. So We're not talking about a city like ours. We could walk mamish miles on end without going that distance without seeing homes. Nevertheless, that is the din. So if this animal is, let's say he's outside of the 2,000 amos, he's 2,100 amos out, so you could make the animal call to call him back in. We're not concerned that maybe the animal is going to carry if he has packages on him. So what do we see from here? That maybe there are no gzeros by animals. Maybe we don't extend the gzera to an animal. Sounds like a great marmakom, amaravina. No, that's not necessarily true, but rather kigon shahayatchum shelah muvla betchum shelo. No, you cannot bring a raya from here. Well, because it's like if you can imagine like a Venn diagram, you have two circles. You have like these two circles like this. They're overlapping in the middle. The 2,000 amma radius that the cow has overlaps with part of your 2,000 amos. So when the animal walks back in, he's still within his 2,000 amos, and now the animal's with you in your tchum. So the Gemara says that you cannot learn from here anything about gzeros, about animals. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar Shchika Samamanim Gufa Tanoi. B'chlal we have a machlokes about Shchika Samamanim, about making medications on Shabbos, and here's the machlokes Tanoim. Tanoihi Titanya Behema Shachla Karshin. And if an animal ate this particular food that he should not have eaten, so one shita says Lo Yirid Sena B'chatzi B'Shvil Shatis Rapeh. You should not force the animal to run around, which apparently was one of the ways to get the animal to go to the bathroom. You make it run laps, and then it would go to the bathroom. Ravoshia Matir. Darash Rava halacha kirevoshia. So there's a bechlala machlokes tanoim about shchikas samamanim, about whether it applies by animals, and there we can see clearly in this case that Ravoshia was matir, that he allowed the act of refuah, of forcing the animal to run around after having eaten karshinin to make sure that it goes to the bathroom to keep itself safe. Masha'en came, the Tanakama was of the opinion that that was also. 2 dots, three lines into the widest line. We said that a man who is paying attention to his zav discharges is not allowed to wear a kis over his aver, and that a goat cannot wear something to cover the udders. We have a brisa that disagrees. Rav Yehuda, how do we answer these conflicting sources? One that says that the udders are permissible to cover, one that says that the udders are not permissible to cover. One is where they're being worn very tightly, that's permissible. The other is that it is not being worn very tightly. Rav Yosef Amar, Tanai shakalt me alma. What kind of ridiculous answer is that? You've taken away 3 shitas in the Tanaim. You answered in lumdus on your own. You came up with your own answer of it's being worn tightly or it's being not worn tightly. We have 3 Tanaim that discuss this exact sugya from our Mishnah. It's not. Ha'izim yotzos throros. The Tanakama holds in our Mishnah that the izim can go out with the udders tied up. Rabbi Yossi Omer Bekulan, he says all of them are asur except chutz min harechelos hakavunos, except for rechelos which are used that are allowed to be covered to keep their fur, to keep the wool perfectly clean. Rabbi Yehuda Omer izim yosos throros liyabesh. They can only have the other udders tied up if it was to make sure that the udders dry out. However, avalo lechalei. So there we have that's a real good answer. So we had answer number 1 that the Gemara rejects, and then answer number 2 is a 3-way machlokes tanaim in regards to how or if the A's, if a goat is allowed to have the udders covered on Shabbos, or we could say no, both of these brises are libad Rabbi Yehuda, but in our Mishnah, we have a distinction. We can apply it to the 2 brises as well. And velo kasha, kan liyabesh, kan lechale. One is that says that it's permissible. That's when the udders are tied up to prevent any milk at all. However, kan lechalev here, where the animal is not, where the udders are not covered up in a way that prevents the milk from flowing out, that would be problematic. Tanya, we have a brayso. Rabbi Yehuda Ma'isa be'izim based on Tuchya. We have the izim that Rabbi Yehuda told the story. The izim from based on Tuchya from the city Shayud Adeim Gasin. The udders were significant relative to the size of the body, so the udders were close to the ground. The asula kisin, and they made some type of pouch, some type of case, kadeshelo yisratu dadein, so that there wouldn't be any cuts on the udders. We'll see a huge sugya on this in Maseches Chulin about chal. How is it that it's mutter to eat a chal? People eat it. It's a delicacy, apparently. How do you eat it if it's specifically saturated with milk? So the way that nursing works is that there's pockets of milk all over the place. So the Gemara and Chulin there says you have to cut it shesivar, you have to cut it a specific way, you have to roast it, a whole big sugya. Tana Rabbanan, 2 dots, 2/3 of the way down. Tana Rabbanan, Ma'isa be'echad shemeso ishto v'hinicha bein linek. There was a man who, Rahman al-Islam, his wife passed away, and he was left to nurse his baby. He couldn't find a wet nurse to nurse the child. And a miracle occurred, and then he became a man who was able to nurse. He was able to then produce milk and nurse his own child. The Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Basar B'Chalav discusses whether or not the milk of a lactating man, which exists, the milk of a lactating man, whether or not it has the status of chalav as it relates to Basar B'Chalav. Can you violate the Isser of Basar B'Chalav with milk that is from a man who can, a fascinating discussion in Shulchan Aruch. So basically the short version is that milk that comes from a behemoth tahora is chalav midaraisa. Milk that comes from a woman has a status of chalav midarabanan. And we treat it as chalav midarabanan because it's a normal source for milk. Women who are nursing, totally normal. They have a baby they could nurse for years in theory if they continue to nurse. However, when it comes to a man who actually in fact lactates, his milk has no halachic status. It is halachically part. It says the Gemara, an analysis of this story, was this a good thing or a bad thing that the nace happened? Not every nace is good, because we saw earlier in the Masechta, I believe it was in this Masechta, that menakan lo mizchu yosef, that when a person has a nace occur to them, it reduces the number of merits that a person has. So how does this play out? Amar Rav Yosef, Borei, come see, kama gadol adam zeh shenasa lo nes kazeh. Unbelievable that a man would be able to nurse. The Meforshim point out that he didn't actually physically look like a woman at this point. It was just miraculous that he was able to nurse. He didn't actually have breasts. It was just the capacity to nurse in a timing that was a meaningful way. Amar le Abaya the Rabbi, I would have said the opposite. He's no tzaddik at all. Kama garua adam zeh. How terrible is this? Shenishtanu lo sidrei breshis. This guy was in such a bad circumstance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to undo sidrei breshis. This is not the way of the world. This is not the way of the world. The men nurse. It's backwards. So he said it's not kashmak. Amar Rav Yehuda Borei kamakashim is an osav shaladim shenishtanu lo sidrei breshis. Continuing in the same theme as Abaye. Look how difficult mizonos of shaladim are. He didn't have enough money for a wet nurse, and he davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or however the nace occurred. And nishtanu sidrei breshis. Amar Rav Nachman Teda. You should just know the misrachish nisa v'lo ibru mizone, that a nace occurred and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't create him food, which would have been a simpler solution. Create food, find a wet nurse, give him some money. So the Gemara assumes seemingly that there is what to be said about the negative aspects of this. Just a few more lines for tonight, and then we will stop. Tana Rabbanan. A man married a woman who did not have one of her hands. It had been cut off. He didn't even know that one of her hands was removed until she passed away. That's a crazy story. Amar Rav said, Bo urei kamatsnua ishazu. Come see how modest this woman is. She's so modest that her own husband didn't even know. This reminds me of the story in the Torah that Avram didn't know that Sarah was beautiful. You didn't know that your wife was a beautiful woman. Crazy. Similar story. So Rav was praising him and said, how modest is she? She covered herself all the time. Her husband didn't even know that she was missing one of her hands. Omar lo Rabbi Chia. Zo Darko Bakach, a woman who's a gidemes, whose hand is cut off, she's always going to be covering her wrist. She's always, because she's embarrassed by it. That's normal. Elakama Tsanua Adam Zesh lo hikir beishto. No, the geshmak is on the guy who was always very modest. He made sure to be exposed to his wife in the ways that were necessary and in no ways that weren't necessary. This is not something for our door. Klal uchlal. This is not something that we should be practicing. It's not normal in our generation at all, and our wives would not appreciate that level of modesty from us. So we should not do that. But that is the story that the Gemara ends on, and these two stories in a row are a little bit unique. The two stories, one about the man who is capable of lactating, and this story here about the gidemes. So the Gemara ends with a little bit of stories tonight, and we're going to stop here. We'll pick up tomorrow night right at these two dots, about 12 lines from the bottom. And I hope that you all have a wonderful night.
Kaya, thank you.
Welcome to you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Something else to say about the reason he gave was easier for him to make